The Grand Galactic Concord was founded over 17 millennia ago during the third resonance of the shifting cosmos, though no one quite remembered exactly why anymore. What began as a loose coalition of 5 spacefaring species had evolved into an unwieldy bureaucratic behemoth, encompassing 37 sentient civilizations across 9 spiral arms of the galaxy. The Concord prided itself on having maintained interstellar peace for over 12,000 years. This was technically true, though what they called peace was more accurately described as a perpetual bureaucratic gridlock that made actual warfare impossible to initiate. Any declaration of hostilities required filing Form GC W1, intent to express displeasure through organized kinetic action. In septuplicate, which then needed approval from no fewer than 22 committees, 3 ethics panels, and a poetry assessment board. The Concord's methods of resolving disputes had themselves evolved into elaborate rituals that would strike any human observer as comically ineffective. Territorial conflicts between the Murgat Collective and the Phison Dominion had once been settled through a 3-century-long competitive meditation contest. The dispute over mining rights in the Verdant Cluster was famously resolved through synchronized nebula gazing, with victory awarded to whichever species representatives could maintain the most aesthetically pleasing pupil dilation patterns while observing cosmic phenomena. It was into this environment of rigid procedures and Byzantine regulations that rumors began to circulate about something extraordinary discovered in a previously uncharted region of space. The rumors spoke of serendipity shards, mysterious crystalline formations that allegedly possessed reality-altering properties. Scientists theorized they might be fragments of the primordial universe, containing encoded information about the fundamental laws of reality. Engineers whispered that they could revolutionize faster-than-light travel. Philosophers suggested they might contain the consciousness of ancient precursor species. Accountants calculated they would be worth a staggering amount of money. These serendipity shards could supposedly only be found in a newly discovered spatial anomaly, a bubble of distorted space-time that had appeared seemingly overnight near the junction of 3 spiral arms. The region, quickly designated as Anomaly Zone XB7, remained largely unexplored due to strange sensor readings and unpredictable gravitational fluctuations. 2 of the Concord's most powerful member species quickly claimed sovereignty over the anomaly zone, each citing obscure clauses from ancient treaties. The Clactori calculators were a species of hyperrational, multi-limbed beings whose entire civilization was built around probability calculations and risk assessment. Their 12-lobed brains could process 17 different statistical models simultaneously, and their cities were architectural expressions of perfect mathematical harmony. Every Clactori citizen knew their exact life expectancy down to the microsecond, updated in real time based on their daily activities. Their claim to the anomaly zone was based on Regulation 7, subsection Theta Prime, paragraph 12.4.b, which stated, "The species which first accurately calculates the trajectory of a wandering comet through the disputed region shall be granted priority consideration." The Scylla Lords of Glimmerax, meanwhile, were acknowledged masters of emotional and perceptual manipulation. Their crystalline bodies housed complex networks of psychic energy, allowing them to project and modulate feelings across vast distances. Though technically pacifists, they had perfected the art of making other species feel so uncomfortable, embarrassed, or mildly annoyed that they would concede negotiations simply to escape the awkward atmosphere. Their counterclaim rested on Regulation 999, Appendix Gamma 7, which declared that species whose collective feels the deepest existential connection to the surrounding starlight in said region shall be considered its rightful custodian. Both sides had submitted their claims through proper channels, initiating what promised to be centuries of committee meetings, subcommittee formation, and the drafting of strongly worded memos expressing disappointment in the other's interpretation of regulatory minutiae. And then the humans showed up. The cosmic burrito was not, by any reasonable standard, an impressive spaceship. Cobbled together from parts of 17 different vessels spanning 6 distinct technological eras, it resembled nothing so much as a floating junkyard that had somehow achieved faster-than-light capability. Its hull was pockmarked with hastily welded patches. Its navigation system ran on what appeared to be a modified restaurant ordering system, and its life support had a disconcerting tendency to play calypso music during oxygen. Cycling. Captain Malcolm Skip Hanlon had acquired the vessel through a series of increasingly dubious transactions that he preferred not to discuss in detail. A former asteroid miner with a philosopher's soul and a degenerate gambler's sense of probability, Skip had assembled a crew as mismatched as a ship. There was One-Eyed Jax, the reformed space pirate who served as helmsman and whose cybernetic eye occasionally picked up soap opera broadcasts from distant systems. Griselda, the foul-mouthed engineer who communicated primarily through creative profanity and had once fixed a warp coil, using only chewing gum and a kitchen whisk. Dr. Sandra Lee, the exobiologist who joined the crew after being banned from academia for suggesting that the universe's first life forms might have evolved from cosmic hiccups. Dizzy, the ship's quartermaster, a 7-foot-tall, gentle giant who collected antique teacups and could bench press a shuttlecraft. And General Mayhem, the ship's cat, whose unexplained ability to appear simultaneously in multiple locations throughout the vessel had led Griselda to theorize that it might actually be leaking through the dimensions. They were currently on a mission of vital importance, finding a legendary space diner rumored to serve the best chili cheese fries in the galaxy. "I'm telling you," Skip was saying, feet propped on the cluttered console of the ship's bridge. "Mama Zorblat's cosmic grill makes fries that'll change your fundamental understanding of the universe." The secret's in the cheese. Some say she imports it from a dimension where dairy products achieved sentience. "Last time you said that about a restaurant," Griselda grumbled from beneath a sparking control panel. "It turned out to be a front for contraband sock smuggling." "That was an honest mistake. How was I supposed to know deep-fried delights was code for illegally modified compression garments?" Captain One-Eyed Jax interrupted, his mechanical eye whirring as it adjusted focus. "Sensors are picking up some kind of spatial distortion ahead. Might be a shortcut we can use." Skip sat up straight, a glint in his eye. "A shortcut to chili cheese fries, you say?" "Plot a course, Jax. Adventure and proper dairy-based condiments await." The cosmic burrito lurched forward, its engines emitting a sound uncomfortably similar to a wheezy elephant, and plunged into the anomaly zone. Inside the anomaly, the laws of physics seemed to be taking a coffee break. Light bent in impossible angles, creating prismatic cascades across the viewports. The ship's artificial gravity fluctuated, causing loose objects to occasionally float upward before crashing back down. Most peculiarly, everyone aboard suddenly tasted mint, despite none being present on the vessel. "Well, this is new," Skip remarked, casually catching a floating mug of coffee. "Dizzy, any idea what we're looking at here?" Dizzy, who is currently anchored to a station by a bungee cord he kept for gravitational emergencies, consulted his screens. "Some kind of reality bubble, Captain. Sensors are going crazy. They're registering this region as simultaneously empty space and the most densely packed matter in the universe." "Scanner's probably just broken again," Griselda called out. "I told you we shouldn't have traded those platinum coils for a karaoke machine." "Best trade I ever made," Skip defended. "Besides, the scanner was already broken. The karaoke machine works perfectly. It only plays songs by the Backstreet Boys. And that's a problem, because—" Their bickering was interrupted by Dr. Lee's excited voice over the intercom. "Captain, you need to see this." When they gathered in the cargo bay, Dr. Lee was standing before a small collection of glowing crystalline objects scattered across the floor. Each was roughly the size of a ping-pong ball and emitted a soft, pulsating light that shifted through colors not entirely within the normal human visual spectrum. "I was cataloging some rock samples when these started appearing throughout the ship," she explained, her scientist composure barely containing her excitement. "They seem to be materializing wherever our hull intersects with certain energy patterns in the anomaly." Skip crouched down to examine one of the crystals. Huh, pretty. Kind of like those mood lights people had back on Earth. He poked one with his finger, and it chimed softly, the sound somehow reminiscent of childhood laughter. Think they'd look nice in the mess hall? Make the place a bit less, well, mess-like. Dr. Lee frowned. Captain, these could be an entirely new form of matter. They might be invaluable for scientific research, or dangerous, or both. Or, Skip countered with the confidence of someone whose risk assessment relied primarily on gut feelings. They could be really nice paperweights that glow in the dark. Dizzy, grab a box. Let's collect these babies. We can decide what they are after we find those chili cheese fries. As the crew gathered the crystals, Skip had a moment of responsible leadership. We should probably tell someone about this. Jax, post something on Facebook, will you? Something scientific sounding. Use the word discovery a lot. One-eyed Jax nodded and composed a message on the ship's outdated social media terminal. Cool discovery alert. Found some glowy rock things in weird space bubble. Super scientific and stuff. Probably important discovery. Also seeking recommendations for best diners in Sector 7. Hashtag Space Explorers, hashtag Glowy Rocks, hashtag Chili Cheese Fries. He added a slightly blurry image of General Mayhem batting at one of the crystals and hit post before returning to his duties, completely unaware that he had just triggered an interstellar incident. The Clactori monitoring station detected the Spacebook post within minutes. The ensuing chaos was unprecedented in their mathematically ordered society. Emergency probability matrices were hastily constructed. Risk assessment councils were convened. A junior analyst suffered the calculative equivalent of a nervous breakdown and began claiming that 2 plus 2 equaled pink. After 23 minutes of disciplined panic, the Clactori composed and filed a formal complaint, Form G6R2, Notification of Resource Extraction Violations by Unaffiliated Entities. The document ran to 847 pages, including 233 pages of statistical projections regarding the potential damage to the cosmic equilibrium and a 94-page appendix calculating the precise level of indignation the Clactori were entitled to feel. Simultaneously, the Sci-Lords of Glimmerax detected a peculiar emotional signature emanating from the anomaly zone, a chaotic mixture of curiosity, mild hunger, and what could only be described as casual disregard for cosmic significance. Their monitors identified the source as a primitive vessel operated by humans, a species they had little data on besides noting they were distressingly unpredictable in their emotional responses and possibly addicted to a bean-based stimulant. The Sci-Lords immediately filed their own complaint, Form GC, EP7, Report of Emotionally Irresponsible Behavior in a Restricted Zone, which included a detailed empathic analysis of the perceived emotional state of the human vessel, highlighting their cavalier approach to spatial anomalies and disturbing lack of appropriate awe. Within hours, an emergency session of the Grand Galactic Concord was convened. Representatives from all 37 member species gathered in the Great Hall of Reasonably Polite Discourse, seated according to the arrangement of mutual non-offense, which had taken 87 years to negotiate and involved complex calculations regarding optimal distances to prevent cultural misunderstandings due to body odor. The Clactori representative, Grand Calculator Zixtel V, who went by Zix in informal settings which never occurred, presented their case first. Standing at precisely the regulation height of 1.73 standard units from the speaking platform, Zix delivered a 4-hour presentation on the statistical improbability of random resource acquisition and its implications for cosmic order. The presentation included 342 slides of increasingly complex equations and concluded with the dramatic revelation that there was a 99.9997% probability that the human intrusion represented an existential threat to established resource allocation procedures. The Sci-Lord representative, Grand Empath, Shimmering Cascade of Autumnal Melancholy, known informally as Mel, followed with a 3-hour interpretive emotional projection designed to make the assembled representatives feel the precise mixture of dignified outrage and bureaucratic determination appropriate to the situation. Several delegates from more susceptible species had to be treated for empathic overload, a condition that manifested primarily as an irresistible urge to organize filing cabinets. After 17 additional speeches, 32 procedural motions, and a mandatory 7-minute break for those species requiring regular photosynthesis, the Concord reached a decision. They would implement Phase 1, standard non-lethal deterrence and assessment protocol, dispatching a joint task force to gently persuade the humans to leave while evaluating their threat level, presumed to be negligible. The task force consisted of a Clacturi observation sphere, a sleek, mathematically perfect orb equipped with the most advanced probability calculation engines in the galaxy, and a Sci-fi empathic emitter vessel, a crystalline structure that pulsed with the carefully calibrated emotional energies of 1,000 meditation masters. Meanwhile, aboard the Cosmic Burrito, the crew had arranged the glowing crystals throughout the mess hall, creating what Skip proudly described as the galaxy's grooviest dinner lighting. General Mayhem had claimed one crystal as a personal toy and was currently batting it under the navigation console, causing occasional course deviations that One-Eyed Jax attributed to spatial hiccups. Approaching an unidentified vessel, Captain Jax reported as the Clacturi observation sphere appeared on their view screen. "Actually, make that 2 vessels. Hail them," Skip ordered, straightening his jacket and running a hand through his perpetually disheveled hair. Could be they know where to find Mama Zorblatz. Before any communication could be established, the Clacturi sphere began projecting complex mathematical equations onto the hull of the Cosmic Burrito. Elaborate probability curves, multidimensional statistical models, and precise calculations of spatial claim validation scrolled across the ship's exterior in glowing symbols. "Would you look at that?" Skip marveled, peering out the viewport. "Some kind of alien light show? Quick, someone put on music." Dizzy, never one to miss an opportunity for impromptu entertainment, activated the ship's external speakers and queued up the only playlist available, Backstreet's Back, Greatest Hits. As, larger than life, blasted into the void, the crew gathered at the viewports, watching in delight as the mathematical projections seemed to pulse in time with the late 20th century pop rhythms. Inside the Clacturi sphere, the observation crew was experiencing the first recorded case of mass bewilderment in their species' history. The human response did not match any of the 7,422 predicted reactions in their database. Their chief analyst began to hyperventilate, a process that for the Clacturi involved rapid flashing of their cranial probability nodes. They appeared to be enjoying our formal notification of territorial violation, the analyst reported, voice tinged with mathematical horror. And they have responded with rhythmic sound vibrations that follow no discernible logical pattern. Meanwhile, the Sci-Fi vessel moved into position and began broadcasting waves of bureaucratic fear and form-filling compulsion. Emotional patterns specifically designed to trigger the primal terror of paperwork that existed in all known sentient beings. Aboard the Burrito, the crew experienced a collective sensation that Dr. Lee described as like suddenly remembering you have 5 overdue library books and an appointment at the Department of Motor Vehicles. Bit of headache coming on, Skip noted, rubbing his temples. Must be this space chili. Always gives me indigestion. Griselda nodded in agreement. Remind me of tax season. Anyone else suddenly worried about itemized deductions? The human crew, having evolved on a planet where bureaucratic frustration was as common as oxygen, merely experienced the psychic onslaught as a mild annoyance, the emotional equivalent of elevator music. They popped some aspirin, complained casually about cosmic radiation, and continued about their business. Only General Mayhem, the ship's cat, showed any significant reaction to the Sci-Fi Lord's emotional barrage. The feline suddenly perked up, pupils dilating to impossible dimensions, and began chasing invisible patterns through the air, occasionally phasing partly through solid objects in its excited state. "Cat's acting weird again," Dizzy observed. "When is it not?" Griselda replied. Inside the Sci-Lord vessel, panic was spreading. The empath captain stared in disbelief at the readings from their emotional sensors. It's impossible, they whispered, their crystalline form clouding with confusion. The humans are resistant. Their emotional patterns show only mild irritation, similar to what one might feel about a slightly uncomfortable chair. And there appears to be a non-humanoid entity aboard their vessel that is actually enjoying our deterrent broadcast. The task force commanders exchanged reports, confirming each other's worst fears. Standard protocols had failed completely. They retreated to a safe distance to consult with Concord headquarters, transmitting urgent messages filled with terms like unprecedented noncompliance, protocol-resistant psychology, and emotionally impervious mammals. The Clactori analysis team calculated a 99.9997% probability that humans were employing some form of advanced psychological warfare based on weaponized chaos. The Sci-Lord's empathic interpreters suggested humans were either too primitive to register recognizable emotional responses or perhaps shielded by processed dairy products, based on scattered references to cheese in their intercepted communications. The Concord, presented with this troubling information, escalated to Phase 2, official warning and minor, rectifiable inconvenience. This involved more direct action. A Clactori vessel deployed a minimal navigational hazard field, a precisely calculated energy barrier designed to politely obstruct the human's path, without causing offense. The barrier represented the mathematical ideal of a warning, calibrated to be exactly 76.4% intimidating and 23.6% accommodating. One-eyed Jax, spotting the shimmering energy net on his navigational display, let out a whoop of excitement. Captain, look at this beautiful obstacle course ahead. Haven't seen anything this interesting since that asteroid slalom in the Cygnus cluster. Skip leaned forward, eyes gleaming with the characteristic Hanlon competitive spirit, which had once driven his great-grandmother to challenge an octopus to an arm wrestling contest. All 8 arms simultaneously. Think you can thread the needle, Jax? Just watch me, Captain. What followed was a masterclass in improbable piloting. The Cosmic Burrito, a vessel that by all engineering standards should barely have been capable of straight-line travel, performed a series of maneuvers that would have made a ballet dancer envious. It spun, rolled, and pirouetted through gaps in the energy barrier that its designers had not even realized existed. In the Clactori Command Center, alarms blared as their computers attempted to calculate trajectories that should have been physically impossible. When the burrito completed its final flip through the barrier's central nexus, a point specifically designed to be mathematically unpassable, the Clactori navigation officer quietly removed his ceremonial calculation cap and ate it. Meanwhile, a Sci-Lord vessel implemented a subtle perception-altering field designed to make the serendipity shards appear dull-colored, uninteresting, and slightly malodorous. It was their most refined form of dissuasion, calibrated to trigger the universal disgust response present in all known sentient species. Inside the Cosmic Burrito's mess hall, Dizzy frowned at the crystals, which had indeed lost some of their luster and now emitted a faint odor reminiscent of wet socks. These things seem different. Griselda walked in, took a sniff, and shrugged. Smells better than the portside bathroom. At least they've got character now. Yeah, Skip agreed, examining one. Now they've got that world-weary glow. Like they've seen things, you know? Makes them perfect for poker night. Nothing says serious card game like slightly stinky mood lighting. The crew, who had spent years on a spacecraft with questionable plumbing, barely registered the smell as noteworthy. Having evolved on a planet where major cities routinely reeked of pollution, fast food, and countless humans in close proximity, they possessed olfactory tolerance that bordered on supernatural. The human ambassador to the Grand Galactic Concord, Kevin Michaels, was summoned to the Concord's central station to explain his species' behavior. Kevin, a 23-year-old community college dropout who had won his position by correctly answering a call-in radio contest question about 1980s breakfast cereals, arrived wearing mismatched socks and a tie with cartoon spaceships on it. So, About this cosmic burrito situation, Kevin began, nervously adjusting his tie as he addressed the assembled diplomatic corps of 37 species. They're probably just some guys having fun, like exploring and stuff. Maybe you could, I don't know, send them an email or something. The hall fell into horrified silence. 3 delegates required emergency philosophical counseling. The phrase "send them an email" was transcribed into the official record with a notation that it might constitute an untranslatable human ritual phrase. By the end of the day, 17 new subcommittees had been formed to analyze the concept of email between stars and its implications for intergalactic diplomacy. Kevin left the meeting with a vague feeling that he'd said something wrong, but was distracted by finding a vending machine that sold what appeared to be blue cotton candy that told jokes while you ate it. Back in the anomaly zone, the situation continued to deteriorate. The Clactori and Sci-fi lords, comparing reports of their failed deterrence attempts, reached the alarming conclusion that standard protocols were completely ineffective against humans. When this information reached the Concord, it triggered a cascade of bureaucratic panic that culminated in the authorization of Phase 3, nonviolent apprehension and mandatory advanced cultural awareness training. A joint fleet was dispatched, armed with the heaviest, non-lethal weaponry permitted under Concord peacekeeping protocols. The vessels carried capture foam projectors and educational material launchers, representing the full but proportionate might of the Concord's peacekeeping procedures. The fleet arrived at the Cosmic Burrito's location to find something totally unexpected. The human vessel surrounded by blinking lights and with a crudely painted banner stretched across its hull reading, "Welcome, Space Brothers. Free chili dogs." Captain Skip Hamlin, having intercepted fragments of communication from what he assumed were friendly fellow explorers, had decided to host an impromptu first contact in the Weird Zone barbecue. The crew had repurposed the ship's emergency signal beacons to create festive lighting, set up a grill in a partially depressurized cargo bay, with appropriate safety measures consisting mainly of Griselda yelling, "Don't stand too close to the space vacuum, you idiots," and prepare to welcome their new alien friends with processed meat products. Admiral Nexvex Hex, the Clactori fleet commander, experienced a full probability engine crash upon viewing the banner, the first such system failure in 12,000 years of Clactori space exploration. The festive, completely inappropriate welcome deeply confused his rigidly logical mind. His first officer had to restart the Admiral's auxiliary reasoning nodes by reciting prime numbers in reverse order. Commander Crystal Harmony, through rigid protocol, leading the Scylla Lord contingent, suffered what empathic specialists would later diagnose as an empathic joy overload from the pure, unmixed, and wholly inappropriate friendliness radiating from the human vessel. The emotional dampeners throughout their ship short-circuited, accidentally broadcasting polka music across 17 star systems. The invasion force cautiously approached. Capture foam projectors were primed. Educational material launchers were loaded with introduction to galactic etiquette pamphlets, featuring helpful chapters like "Why We Don't Touch Things That Aren't Ours" and "Resource Allocation." The 7,000-year perspective. Then Captain Skip's voice boomed across open channels. "Hey there, space friends. Come on aboard. We've got space dogs with all the fixings. BYOB, but we've got plenty of nebula nectar to share." This was followed by what sounded like someone, presumably dizzy, enthusiastically blowing into a party horn. A Clactori tactical team, attempting to secure the engine room, found themselves receiving an impromptu engineering lesson from Griselda, who had mistaken them for newbie interns here to learn about hyperdrive harmonics. When one of them accidentally kicked a persistently malfunctioning warp coil junction, something Griselda had been threatening to do for months, the system suddenly aligned perfectly, increasing the ship's efficiency by 20%. Griselda promptly adopted the entire team as her alien engineering babies. A squad of Sci-fi negotiators, tasked with explaining the complexities of Concord resource allocation treaties, found themselves drawn into an intensely competitive game of space canasta with Captain Skip, who turned out to be an unervingly skilled card player. His completely random strategies defied all their emotional prediction capabilities, leading the lead negotiator to question several of their life choices. Within hours, the fleet was in disarray. Half the crews were enjoying the barbecue. Some were questioning their career paths, and several junior officers had submitted transfer requests to the non-existent Human Culinary Diplomacy Corps. The situation reached its climax when Dr. Lee, casually examining some mineral samples, offhandedly mentioned to a group of fascinated Calactori scientists that the serendipity shards were actually Flurgium-90, a crystallized byproduct of space whale digestion, fairly common in unexplored regions, and mainly used for cheap souvenirs. She offered each of them a crystal, suggesting they might make nice paperweights or conversation pieces for your probability desks. The revelation that the extremely valuable resource at the center of this incident was essentially worthless, and worse, excretory in nature, sent shockwaves through the fleet. The Calactori and Sci-fi lords, faced with this truth, the complete failure of all protocols, and the fact that their elite troops were now learning human folk songs, experienced a collective existential crisis. The Concorde officially classified the entire incident as a successful joint interspecies cultural exchange session and resource identification error correction. All records of the conflict were quietly archived under anomalous human social phenomena. The Cosmic Burrito, now slightly more famous and with a surprisingly efficient engine, continued its quest for the perfect chili cheese fries, leaving a bewildered but strangely charmed Concorde behind. The Calactori updated their probability models to include a human random variable, which essentially rendered all future predictions impossible. The Sci-fi lords began an in-depth study of the therapeutic properties of illogical joy and processed meat products. In the aftermath, a high-level Concorde meeting convened to debate a new protocol for dealing with humans. The proposed procedure was a single sentence. If humans are involved, abandon all logic, bring snacks, and hope for the best. A junior. In turn, Kevin, now slightly less confused, timidly suggested, maybe just talk to them? Like with words. The entire council stared at him as if he had just revealed the secret of a universe. As for why humans are the only species that can win a war without trying, perhaps it's because what the rest of the galaxy understands as warfare simply cannot compute within humanity's beautifully chaotic operating system. Or maybe it's just the chili dogs,